plugging along and got it down to a dozen.
Well, that's the thing about a six-game match. We talked a little bit about this last week. It's a little different from a three-game match. There tends to be a lot more ebb and flow. There's an opportunity to kind of move ahead and then maybe fall back a little bit.
Well, I'm sure Deb Regan is a great fan of it, and I'm not so sure Janet would like it, but that's the way it is.
All right, let's meet our two bowlers. Just to refresh your memory, our two finalists who competed through a series of events just to get to this point to compete for the state championship in New Hampshire. Our number 3 seed from Manchester, New Hampshire is Deb Regan.
Okay, Deb averaging 118, high single 191, high triple 437.
And again, Deb threw a 338 last week in the first 3 games of this 6-game match. Deb making her very first appearance in the New Hampshire State Championship Finals. As for her opponent, our number 1 seed for the 2nd year in a row, she was the runner-up in this event last year here on the Winds of New England, trying to win it this year and trying to get her 4th state championship in New Hampshire from Lynn, Massachusetts, Janet Poch.
Okay, Janet averaging 123, high single of 182, high triple 450.
And again, Janet with the 350 a week ago. So she has a 12-pin lead. Remember, the scores are cumulative. It's a 6-game match. Janet will carry the 12-pin lead into the next 3 games, which we will have here today for you on the Winds of New England. So again, to refresh your mind on the scores, Janet Poch with a 350 and Deb Regan with a 338. So we will pick it up at that point when we return to the Londonderry Bowling Center after these messages. Don't go away. From the Londonderry Bowling Center, Deb Regan set to go. This is game 4. We'll be reminding you of that during the course of the hour because this is obviously a departure from our regular format. A 6-game match spread over 2 weeks to determine the women's state champion. And starting next week, we will begin our men's championship match. A 9-box for Deb Regan to start it off. That men's championship final next week will be number 1 seed Gary Carrington against number 4 seed Dave Richards. An all-Plastow championship match.
Deb Regan almost converted that half-wister for a spare. Janet Poch almost did that a couple times in last week's match.
10 bucks for Deb. Now our number 1 seed, Janet Poch. Right on the head pin and a wobbling 4. Spare for Janet. Now we should call your attention to this too. As we look at the computer, you can ignore the well, for this first game this week, you will just see the lead in this game. But remember that Janet had a 12-pin lead in the match coming in, and this time a rocking 8-pin as she drops 9 on the spare. So we'll keep you up to date on the total score situation in addition to what you're seeing on the computer. And another spare for Janet, and I believe that she got a second hit there on the, looked like maybe the ball. Was it the ball or a piece of wood?
I'm not so sure she was going high on the wood there. She could see the 8-pin, plus she had another piece of wood to the right that would have helped her, but it's 2 in a row. 4 horsemen right for Janet, for Deb, I should say. 1, 3, 6, and 10.
No. 9 box. In the pocket, a little heavy. And last week, Deb was faced with a lot of shots like this, where she had to work on a cut shot. She came very close on a number of them. But Deb hung in there last week and was able to put a couple of big marks up toward the end and cut into that lead for Janet Poch. But right now, Janet is threatening to bump it up again because she's got 2 marks in a row. Looking for more here. As Dan mentioned, the lead did get up as high as 40 pins a week ago before Deb started her comeback.
Another solid 9-pin drop by Janet Poch, both on spares. And this time she got a nice angle on a piece of wood on the 4-pin. 3 in a row.
3 in a row. That's the first time in the match that either bowler has been able to put 3 marks in a row. So Janet is taking quick action here to increase her lead.
Back in the pocket again, this time an 8-pin drop. I think she's going to have to go way right. No, I would have taken both pieces on that one, but
that's a 10 box for Janet, and she now has her largest lead in the match, 41 pins. So that didn't take long. 3 quick marks to start game 4. Still plenty of time for Deb Regan. Not quite on the head pin that time. And Deb will take an 8.
just 45 through 5. That's exactly what Deb did not want to happen. Wanted to try to put some offense up early in the match. Early in the second half of the match, I should say.
Did you enjoy halftime, by the way?
Yes, it was
A
very
week-long
exciting.
halftime, yeah.
Yes.
We have just beaten the record, by the way, for the longest halftime ever. It was held by the Orange Bowl. But ours was a week long. There's a big spare right there for Deb Regan in the 6th. Her first mark today.
First mark since last week.
Yep. She now has 9 altogether in the match. Janet Poch has 12, and Janet thought that she was going to have a punch out. She had a problem with that in the 3rd game last week, and I think she anticipated the worst on that ball, but instead she's got a spare leave.
She seems to have a little more velocity on the ball this week, and I think that was probably the reason she broke that up.
For the spare, yes.
It looked like she was going to pull that ball to the left, but luckily it caught the piece of wood and kept the ball in play for the spare. Already at 76 through 5.
Six, Phil. For another one. Oh, my.
There it goes.
That piece of wood went in front and then behind before finally knocking it over. What a great shot.
Well, look at that. Just enough to topple it from behind. That's 5 spares out of 6 boxes.
And that was the prettiest of all of them.
Now 5, 7, 8, and 9. Looks like the angle of the wood the ball should take the 7. The problem could probably be the 8 pin. Now she was real low in the wood. No chance for the 7.
We mentioned that during the course of their state championship coverage here on the Winds that we would fill you in on the state champions in all the different divisions. So let's handle some of the scratch divisions that these ladies both competed in. The state singles champion, Janet Poch, with a 656. And of course that 656 total was included in her 21 game total for the all events championship. Janet Poch beating Colleen Macris by 33 pins to win the singles championship. The ladies doubles championship, Beth Richards and Tony Marie Baldinelli winning it by 19 pins over Nancy Vestal and Janet Poch. 9 box for Deb Regan, 80 through 8. Janet Poch to work on a spare again. The mixed doubles state champions, Joanne Vandiver and Dennis Valcourt, with a 13.04. Second place went to Deb DeRocher and Joe Ashline.
7 on the spare for Janet, gives her 99 through 6.
And looking at another cut shot here. Well, a piece of wood moving in possibly to help.
Probably isn't deep enough unless she goes right on the cap. Not quite enough.
Almost. Great effort, though. Janet Poch was also on the ladies teams state champion. Her teammates were Nancy Vestal, Lois Queen, Eileen Bolo, and Cindy Queen.
That close for another mark.
Right now a 49 pin lead. Make it a 50 pin lead in the match for Janet Poch. Not quite. And the mixed team state champion, 2 men and 2 women competing together, Deb DeRocher, Tony Marie Baldinelli, Joe Ashline, and Gary Carrington. So there you see it, a 38 pin lead in this game, a 50 pin lead overall now for Janet Poch, as she just exploded here in the early stages of game 4.
Same lead she just had. This time the wood is not as favorable on the 5, 7, 8, and 9. Somehow she's got to move that pin to carry the 7.
Oh,
she
my.
almost flipped the 5 pin over there. That's a 9.
9 box for Deb Regan. Back on the head pin and kicking out the 10. So an opportunity for a spare here for Deb in the 10th. And she's all over it.
So 99 through 10 plus the bonus ball.
That is 10 marks overall in the match now for Deb Regan. And a 5 fill for a 104. So that is 442 through 4 for Deb Regan now. Janet Poch getting a great mix here. Needs one other pin to go.
Now she has a 2 and the 8, which is by themselves is bad news, but she has a piece of wood in between, also one to the right. She's going to go right after the 2 pin, which should help her on the 8.
It does. That's Janet's 6th mark of this game. All spares. She has 15 marks overall in the match. Some great candlepin bowling to wrap up the season here on the Winds of New England as Janet Poch throws a 9 on the spare. This is going to be by far her best game of this final.
It's already at 137 through 9.
And a spare in the 10th. .147 plus a ball. Janet is going to have a sizable lead heading into the last 2 games. Looking for the mix, gets it, and she will take 8 on the spare, a 155 for Janet Poch. And a 4-game total of 505. So the lead is 63 pins for Janet Poch with 2 games to go to decide the New Hampshire All-Events State Championship. We'll be back. Through 4 games, here are the totals here in the New Hampshire Women's All-Events Championship. Janet Poch with a 63-pin lead, 505 to 442. Still 2 games to go, and Janet is ready to start us off here in Game 5 of 6 here at the Londonderry Bowling Center. Janet got off to a quick start in the first game both weeks. This week she had 5 marks in the first 6 boxes. Last week she had 4 marks in the first 7. And she's been able to reestablish the lead after Deb Regan made a great charge on her toward the end of last week's Game 3.
She's going to shoot at the 3, 5, 6, 9, and 10. Piece of wood out in the front.
Yes, no spare.
She continues to get that quick start. Spare up in the first. I thought she'd have trouble with the 10-pin, but as you can see, no problem at all. Push that one a little bit. Just 3 on the spare.
Really, the only problem Janet has had in this match was back in the 3rd game last week when she went through a 5 or 6 box stretch when she was just punching through the middle all the time and making things difficult for herself. But she was able to work most of those bad first balls out for good boxes. She had just 1 bad box, and that might have been the key. She was able to hang on to her lead, and she just came out and was firing on all cylinders to start this week. And there are 2 more marks to start off Game 2. Now, we should point out, as you look at the computer, that under Janet Poch's name, you see a 167 for the opening game. It was a 155 opening game today, but we have just added the 12 pins in from last week so that the lead figure that you see in the total lead for the match on the computer will be accurate. So the actual score for Janet in that first game was 155, but we have just added the 12 pins in to keep you abreast of the total score. And Deb takes 7. Deb Regan making her first ever appearance in the state finals.
Certainly been close a number of times. I know that. I was
Yeah.
surprised when you gave that stat. That was the first time.
Yeah.
Looking for the strike and getting the strike.
Yeah, close a number of times, including last year, Dan. We'll talk about that maybe in a minute, but here's another look at Deb's strike in regular speed. 7 on the spare for Janet. 3 strikes for each bowler now.
Janet didn't have a spare. She had a spare in the first box.
I apologize. That's why we have you here, Dan, so that you can keep score for me.
Well, I just thought I might have made my one mistake. And it's a 9, 32 through 3. In cruise control right now. 69 pin advantage, although Debbie Regan is working on a strike, and I'm sure she's thinking if I could throw a double, certainly would almost have that lead.
Oh, almost. The answering strike for Janet Poch.
Nice little guide to the right. Just plenty of room to miss this shot on the right. Left of the red line, but she'll right at the pin, and she doesn't need that wood at all. Spare in the fourth.
Mark number 18 in the match for Janet Poch. Debbie Regan on a strike. Looking for the double. A little thin on the hit. You mentioned Deb came into this competition as the number 3 seed, finishing 3rd in the ladies all events. Last year she finished 5th, advancing to the match play portion of the competition, and lost her first match play matchup against Carol Downey. So she's been in it, as you said, Dan, a number of times, and this is the first time she's made it to the finals. I dare say it won't be the last.
Oh, there you go. 7 pin goes down finally. Not much difference between that first ball and the box before when she left at 2, 4, 5, 8, and 10.
A spare for Deb Regan. Both bowlers with spares up. And we take a break from the Londonderry Bowling Center. The New Hampshire State All Events Final continues after this. Janet Poch working on a spare and with a 61 pin lead in hand. 16 boxes remaining to decide the New Hampshire All Events Championship. Don't forget the men's championship will get underway next Saturday here at 12 noon from the Londonderry Bowling Center. That'll be Gary Carrington against Dave Richards. And don't forget, tomorrow at noon from Park Place Lanes in Wyndham, it'll be the finals of the Tri-State Megabucks Tournament of Champions. Bob Kelly against Tim Lipke. Dan Murphy flying solo. Tournament of Champions. Showing that championship spirit himself.
I just thank God for videotape. The bowlers kept saying, we don't get this many chances.
Through the center for Janet. She'll have to work on the 3, 4, 6, and 7. Not quite. The New Hampshire Women's All Events Championship, brought to you in part by the Carphone Store of Nashua. The Carphone Store of Nashua, now an authorized Bell Atlantic 9X mobile agent and participating sponsor of Candlepin Bowling here on the Winds of New England. Opportunity here for Deb Regan with 2 open frames. She gets 5 on her spare.
Tough leave, though, with the 4 horsemen plus the 9 pin in the back.
And an 8 box for Deb. All even in this game. 63 pin lead for Janet Poch. This is now the 5th game of this match, Dan. Janet has trailed only once, and that was after the 3rd box of the first game. And Deb had a 1-pin lead. Other than that, Janet has been in control. 10 for Deb Regan.
Janet kicks out the 10 pin, leaves herself just the 1, 2, and 4.
No, just missing on the head pin. We gave you many of the state champions already in the scratch division. Want to make sure we don't leave out the champions in the handicap division, so let's run down some of those. You might be able to add a comment or two on some of these names, Dan. Ladies handicap singles champion Diane Emerson, the 737.
Okay, that's the wife of Ed Emerson, B&L Bowl proprietor. Nice job there.
Mixed doubles handicap state champions Phyllis Magnuson and Kevin Simpson.
All right, new names to the winning column. Nice going.
And mixed teams handicap state champion, that's 2 men and 2 women on the same team, Denise Hoyt, Deborah Bradford, Steve Hartwell, and Dave Cromie. Dave Cromie has been with us here on
Absolutely.
the wins.
Yeah, congratulations to all those. Deb just is back to that.
Well, she's looked at a lot of these kind
Yeah, that drought she had last week during the second game where she put the ball in the pocket but leave that extra pin, this time the 10 pin. Triangle plus the 10. It's difficult to make shots like that continuously anyways.
It's always interesting too, Dan, at state championship time to look over the list of the top finishers in the all events. And in the women's division of the all events, we ran down the scores last week, but of the top 10 finishers, most of them have appeared at one time or another here on the Winds of New England. The only ones who have not, Colleen Macris, who wound up as the state singles runner-up to Janet Poch. So perhaps we can look for Colleen to be here with us at some point in the future. Holly Poland also has not been on television before. She finished 9th.
It's another one of B&L's bowlers. Spare in the 9th for Janet, knocking down that 7 pin.
Oh, right through the center.
Just 4.
100 through 9. This format, by the way, that we're using for the state finals, this 6-game format, not only is a first for television, but I think probably a first for any kind of competition. Normally you see either 3 games, 5 games, or 10 games. But I don't know if we've ever had anything with 6 games.
No. We can thank television for that.
That's right. That's right.
Deb Regan working on a spare in the 8th. Got to hurry with it. Not quite. 4 horsemen again left. He's had more success with these than to the right. 1, 2, 4, and 7.
No, not quite. $10 for Deb. And that total lead in the lower left-hand corner for Janet Poch, that is the cumulative lead for last week's 3 games and this week's 2 games. With 1 game to go. Well, Deb just missed the head pin, but it didn't work out so badly.
No, good break off the head pin, just leaving the 1 and the 3.
And no, chopped it off. And 111 for Deb Regan. So Deb has won her 2nd game of the 5. Janet has won the other 3 games. And we will have the 5-game totals for you when we come back. But that lead in the lower left-hand corner is the correct lead at this point. Janet Poch with a 62-pin advantage with 1 game to go. Back at Londonderry after these words. The total damage after 5 games of this all-event state championship: Janet Poch 615, Deb Regan 553. And we pick it up with game 6, and Deb can't find the head pin. At the end of last week's game 3, Deb had crawled within 12 pins of Janet. But Janet just came out on fire here today.
Really, the difference is that the first game of this week, the 155.
Right.
And remember, you see a 167 there for Janet, but that's including her 12-pin lead from last week.
Well, we've talked about this situation before here on the Winds Dam. When you're trailing by this many pins, you just got to think in terms of throwing a 160, 165 and hope for the best.
That's right.
Ooh, almost.
Can't keep shooting at spare leaves like that, though.
No.
Expect to get 160s. Next week, Dave Richards takes on the #1 seed Gary Carrington in a 6-game match over 2 weeks.
That should be very interesting.
Yeah, certainly should.
Gary, the defending state champion, and Dave, of course, as is Gary, many times having appeared with us here on the Winds, so that should be a terrific match. 6 games starting next week, next Saturday at 12 noon. Right here at Londonderry to decide the men's all events championship. Janet for the spare. Almost. Great effort. $9. Candlepin Skins, of course, will return in the fall here on the Winds of New England. Janet just missing that cut shot because of the wood, perhaps. And a big strike. Ooh.
1-2 Poch at that time, and there was just no doubt about it. Just a matter of time.
That is 20 marks in the match now for Janet Poch, her 4th strike. Deb Regan on the head pin, but again, another split. That's kind of what it's been about for Deb.
Yeah, it's, the only thing I see here is try to play the single pin, the 4-pin, and snap the wood at the same time across for the 6 and 10. Ooh, sent the 4-pin over.
Candlepin Skins, as I started to say, will return in the fall in this same time slot, Saturdays at noon. Of course, during the summer, we'll have rebroadcasts of some of the more memorable programs from this past season. But there will be a new look for Candlepin Skins starting in the fall, and We'll obviously have more about that in the fall when we start the new season, but one thing we can tell you is that Candlepin Skins will have a new home base in the fall. We'll be coming to you from Pilgrim Lanes in Haverhill, Massachusetts.
Sil Angelotti and the crew down there will be setting things up for us. So when September rolls around, or early September, you should probably give Pilgrim Lanes a call in Haverhill and see when our first taping is for the skin show.
Yeah, the first tapings, both for the regular single show and for the skin show, will be in September. The new season will begin probably the first weekend in October, somewhere around there. But you can stay tuned to the Winds to find out more about all the details.
Spare on strike for Janet.
Oh, and another big fill. 9 more. Well, Janet just showing the form, especially today, that has won her already 3 New Hampshire state championships and 1 Massachusetts state championship. She is well on her way to number 4 here in the Granite State. We will return with more in a minute. Deb Regan.
Finally gets the 10 pin to go down.
And that just makes the leave less bad.
Yeah. 2, 7, and 8. Couple pieces, actually 3 pieces of wood. Oh.
No.
You know, I just had a feeling that was going to happen. That's the way the day's been going for Deb.
10 bucks.
48, the halfway point. Third game, or 6th game, I should say. Third game today.
The 1996 New Hampshire Women's All Events State Championship here on the Winds of New England, brought to you in part by Meineke Discount Muffler, a new sponsor here on the Winds. Our thanks to them. Janet Poch working on 3 marks in a row. She has bunched her marks together here this week. 7 fill this time. Possibilities here on the 1, 4, and 10.
Trying to go 4 marks in a row and just cruising along.
Ooh, missed the object.
Missed the object, missed the wood next to the object, and
takes it out for the 10.
75 half though. See the 10 bucks. Ball taking out the 10.
That lead now up to 89 pins as Janet has it in cruise control right now. Good effort. And that'll be an 8 box for Janet Poch as the ball slipped into the channel. So an 8 in the 6th.
Janet, after 5 games, 3 last week, 2 this week, 615, 123 average. The exact average she came in with. She's averaging 123 in one of her leagues. So,
and she's on a 123 pace in this game right now.
So, model of consistency. But we'll go back to that first game today of the 155. Seemed to set the tone for the rest of the match.
Well, now one thing we're going to have to ask Janet about after the match is over is this even-numbered year thing. Because this will now mean that her 4 New Hampshire state championships have all come in even-numbered years.
So she shouldn't bowl in the tournament next year then? 'Cause
she's won it every other year starting in 1990. Deb Regan still looking for her first mark in the 6th and final game. And she'll get it on the 3-6-10. Mentioned Janet Poch down bowling at her average for really all 6 of these games now. Had the big game to start today, 155, but it's averaged out to be right in her normal range. That's really the difference. Deb Regan has not been quite up to her average. Through the first 5 games, she was averaging 111, and her league average is 118. So there's your difference in the match right there. And that'll be a 9 for Janet. 101 through 8. And down to the final 2 boxes now. Deb Regan working on the spare. Seven fill, but boy, just hard to even count the number of splits that she's had.
Yeah, she's had a lot of 7 pins up, a lot of 10 pins up.
And that'll go as a 9. 93 through 9 with 1 to go. Usually after having a match like this, all the breaks kind of condense into the last 2 or 3 boxes, but Deb's going to have to work hard. Yeah, Deb's going to have to work pretty hard on this one too. Last box of the match.
5, 8, and 10. Catch the wood and the 5 pin.
Got
Nice
it.
shot.
Fine shot. And that is 15 marks in the match for Deb Regan, with a chance for another as she'll throw her final ball. It's a 5 fill, a 108, and a 6-game total of 661 for Debbie Regan. But your 1996 New Hampshire Women's All Events champion, and our man John on the graphics has already got it up there on the board. 4-time New Hampshire state champion now, Janet Poch. Nine box. Does John pronounce his last name Wayash? Is that correct? Wayashi. See, I knew if I mentioned it, it would be wrong. That's why I didn't mention it the first time. John handles all the graphics for us here on Candlepin Stars and Strikes, and also on Candlepin Skins, and here in the tournament. And he is just one of the outstanding group of talented people that we have working on our crew here, and our thanks to all of them for another great season. We have 2 weeks left to go.
Who are the others? Just kidding, guys. Just kidding.
An 8-box for Janet Poch, a 118, and a 6-game total of 733 for Janet Poch. We'll run over the totals and present the winning checks for Janet Poch and Debbie Regan when we come back. Don't go away.
All right, here are the final numbers at the Londonderry Bowling Center. A 6-game match for the Ladies All Events Championship in the state of New Hampshire. Janet Poch had a 383 3-game total today to make it 733 for 6, and Deb Regan with a 661. Dan, we talked about the fact that Janet was in the lead most of the way, but really what did it for her today was that great start right off the top in the beginning of Game 4 at the top of today's show.
Well, Deb made a run at her last week, so Janet wanted to establish herself again this week, and to do that, a quick start, and that's exactly what she did. I think she had like, I don't know,
5 out of 6, yeah.
5 out of 6 marks, and that was the set the tone for the rest of the match.
All right, let's present the checks here and meet both of our bowlers who did such great work to get to this championship match. First of all, a big round of applause for Deb Regan, our runner-up. $250 is the runner-up check in the state all events, and you'll also be getting a trophy as well. And well, I know this was your first time in the final, so you got to be feeling pretty good about that, even though you probably don't like the outcome too much.
She threw a nice ball. My ball didn't do anything today, so, you know, what are you going to do?
You were looking at a lot of tough leaves on the second ball.
But I wasn't throwing a good ball. It was kind of lazy.
Well, still, though, it's got to be nice you kind of break through. You get to the finals for the first time. Now you just have to come back and do it the right way next time.
I will.
All right. Thanks, Deb. Congratulations. Very nice job. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our 4-time New Hampshire state champion, Janet Poch. Congratulations, Janet. You'll be receiving a trophy also. The first place check is worth $500. And, well, I got to ask you about this even-numbered year thing. This is 1990, 92, 94, and now 96.
I know. I thought about that this morning coming up here. I said, oh, this is my year because it's 96. I'll take them anytime I can get them.
Well, I know you've been in the finals many times, but I got to think, you know, last year was the first time the finals were on television, and you were the runner-up last year. So I imagine that gave you a little extra incentive coming into this match.
Yeah, it did a little bit.
Coming into this day now, after having the 12-pin lead, Deb made a little run at you at the end of Game 3, but obviously you came out and you had your best ball working.
Yeah, I did. I had a good first ball, which makes it easier on the second ball.
Well, congratulations. 1 state championship in Massachusetts and now 4 in New Hampshire. Congratulations again, Janet. Great work. Janet Poch, the 1996 New Hampshire women's state champion. And so now that has us looking ahead to next Saturday at 12 noon when we will begin our 6-game match to determine the men's all-events champion. And as we mentioned earlier today, the competitors for that match next Saturday will be Gary Carrington and Dave Richards. Gary Carrington, the #1 seed.
Yeah, Gary, #1 seeds. You know he's been bowling well. Dave Richards had 2 great matches to get to the finals, and both of them were well over 700 for the 5 games. So both bowlers seem to be at top of the game, so it should be exciting.
All right, and don't forget also a nice match coming up tomorrow at noon here on the Winds of New England. And Dan Murphy can preview that one for you, too. It's our final match for the Tri-State Megabucks Tournament of Champions, and that's going to be Tim Lipke against Bob Kelly.
What can you say? They both quality bowlers. The only thing is the difference about them is one's right hand and one's left hand, but the talent is there. Should be an exciting match.
All right, that Lipke and Kelly match will be tomorrow at noon from Park Place Lanes here on the Winds of New England. And again, don't forget, next Saturday here in Londonderry at 12 noon, we will start the 6-game men's all-events championship match between Gary Carrington and Dave Richards. Until next time, then, for Dan Murphy and our whole crew, I'm Doug Brown. Thanks for being with us. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Stay with WNDS throughout the afternoon for an hour of sports, starting with all the national hype on Sports Wrap at 5. And then join WNDS High School Sports Review at 5:30 for all of the local action. Sports Wrap at 5, High School Sports Review at 5:30. Now grab your cowboy hat and slip on your blue jeans for Dancing East of the Border, next on WNDS.